What's up, you guys? I want to give you guys a tutorial on the basketball challenge and the blocks that you guys are going to need to know how to use. So for the basketball drills challenge, your goal is to go up and back and up and back and up and back. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go forward one grid square and then make it reverse to the beginning point, and then we're going to go to 2 to the beginning and then 4 to the beginning. So that looks like this. Up 1, up 2 and back, and then up 4 and back. And done. So to do that, you're going to want to use the drive block over here, and you have the option of, when driving forward or reverse, and you can choose for how many millimeters. As a reminder, one square is 200 millimeters. So if you were to only have drive forward 200 millimeters, it would look like this. Well, 800 millimeters looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's all you'll need for challenge 1. Challenge 2, on the other hand, prohibits you from using the reverse block. So you guys are going to have to use one of these in order to get Mr. Robot to go back to home. Not going to tell you exactly which one to use, but play around with them and see what helps. I will tell you guys though, on level 3, you use this block in order to make a square. All right, so level 3, you guys are going to build an algorithm to move through all 1 through 8 grid squares in sequential order. So in order to do that, we're going to scroll down to variables over here, and we're going to use over here set. Now you'll notice I customized the word grid blocks over here because when you load, it's just going to say set my variable, and we're going to custom name it grid blocks right now. So to do that is we're going to take that, we're going to drag this to be the start of our program, and then we're going to tap on my variable and click rename variable. We're going to delete this, and we're going to type in grid blocks and click submit. You'll notice my variable then changes to grid blocks, so we set a custom variable. And this is important because in this challenge, we want to be moving a different number of grid blocks. So I'm going to change the grid blocks to be equal to 1. And then if you notice over here, the drive command says to move forward for 200 millimeters, but the unit right now is a grid block, not a millimeter. So we're going to need to use an operator so that we're able to select what we need. So by taking an operator, what I can do is I can drag and drop this where 200 was. You'll notice when you move it on top of that 200 and that little light pops up, you can drop it and it will snap into place. So now we can use that operator. So if we wanted to move forward for a certain number of grid blocks, we would go down to our variables where we have grid blocks over here, and we drag this guy and put it into the second operator by putting it on top also. Usually works just a little bit north of it, and then you drop it. So we're saying we're going to move it for a certain number of grid blocks. So what you might notice is when you drive forward for 200 millimeters and we were to make this happen, you'll see that it goes to that spot right there. But if we were to swap out the drive forward for 200 millimeters for drive forward for 200 grid blocks, it's going to go exactly 1 block forward, the same amount as before. So the variable over here is just a new way to name it. But this is where using the variable comes in handy. So if I were to take this block over here and hold down on it and duplicate it, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to connect this and I'm going to select drive and reverse. So now this is going to go forward for 200 and then reverse for 200 grid blocks. So you'll see that it looks like this. Kind of just the same as what we did before, but here's the catch. When you're using a variable like this, there's another variable that you're able to use under variables, which is change the variable. So if I were to drag change this variable over here by 1, what's going to happen? Well, nothing yet because we don't have any code after it, but anything that happens after it, every time it's supposed to be 1 grid block, it's going to think it's 2. So if I tap on this and I duplicate this, and I were to put this attached to the block over here, these over here, instead of driving forward for 1, they're going to drive forward for 2. So let's take a look what this does. It goes forward and back. Now it goes forward for 2 and then back for 2. So by changing the variable over here, we allowed these to be worth 2. And if we were to add them again over here, duplicate, what do you think is going to happen? That's right, you guessed it. So it's going to go forward for 1, back for 1, forward for 2, back for 2, then forward for 3, back for 3, because every time I change it, the variable goes up by 1. So your job is to do this all the way from 1 to 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, all the way to 8 to 8. So from watching this video, I'm sure you can figure out how to do this, but there's one other thing that I want to show you. Another potential way to figure this out. Instead of repeating this over and over and over and over, there's a control structure called repeat. So if I were to set the grid blocks to 1 and then take the repeat function, I could make this repeat as many times as I want. So let's say I wanted to repeat it 4 times, or like we did before, 3 times. Put back the operator. Notice this is the operator with a star in it, which means multiply. The minus, plus, and slash are not going to work here, so don't use those yet. We'll get into them later. So using this repeat function over here, we can see it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it will do that every time with the repeats. But what happens if we add in the change operator? Change variable. Drag this back in, and we're going to change it inside of the repeat loop. So every time it repeats, we're going to increase it by 1. So let's see what happens when I do that. So the first time it goes forward and back, then it's forward for 2, back for 2, forward for 3, back for 3. So by using this repeat, it will do it those 3 times, and you'll see it keep going. So you now have 2 different ways that you can solve this challenge. Go ahead and finish this challenge up, and you've learned a lot about different movements, variables, controls, and operators.